Hi everyone, today we're going to do a CSS tutorial with your Glitch page account. So sign into Glitch, and in your account you should land on your dashboard, and then up at the right hand corner here there is a button that says New Project, and click on that, and it gives us 3 templates to work with, and we're going to work with the basic web page, hello web page. So click on that, and it will automatically generate a template for us that is hosted on the Glitch platform. And that lets us work with coding the site in the browser, but then also it's hosted automatically. So we don't have to work separately on our desktop and then host it later. So there's 4 files here. There's a README file, which gives you information about the site. And if you click on Markdown, you can change that. So whatever you want to put here, it's good to put in some information. And then they give us an index, a CSS, and a JavaScript. So 3 things that are important for the web. And up here at the top, I can change the information here. So I'll say CSS tutorial, and then I can change this here as well and put event week 2 CSS, or I guess it's week 3 CSS, week 3 CSS. And here you can also, from this drop-down menu, change projects, switch projects. You can go to, let's see, you can change your editor settings. And then here under share, you can change, oh, you know what, I think they made it, yeah, they made it now. So you have to have a paid account in order to make it private. So you can't change the share options now. But if you go over to the show button here and click next to the code, it will show you what the web page will look like once you go to the page. So there's a preview here. And as I'm working on the code here, it will automatically update. So there's this glitch button down here that I am just going to erase. I'm going to highlight that and erase it. And now this will update and the button's gone over here. I can also go to show in a new window. And this is what it will look like if I sent you the URL and you clicked on it. This would just be the web page. So this is what it looks like in a new browser window. That's the name of my URL, and the title up there is hello. So it gives us all the sort of like basic parts of the website. So we have the doc type, and then it gives us HTML, the language is English, and then we have our header tag, and it gives us a couple of more things in here. So it's the character set. We have the content edge. Here is the viewport, so it's going to change the width according to the width device, and our title. So I'm going to call this CSS tutorial, and that will change the title on the tab up here, CSS tutorial. And then they have a link in the head tag to the style sheet. So this is another file that is in the site folder, and this is where we're going to style our content. They also have a JavaScript link, and we're not going to do JavaScript this week yet, so I'm just going to delete the script tag, link to this and delete this, there's 3 little dots here. If you click on it, you can rename, duplicate, or delete. I'm just going to delete this. So we just have index, CSS, and the README. And okay, so we have this. And now we have our body tag with our header, a header and a paragraph tag, and then a closed body tag and a closed HTML tag. So I'm also going to get rid of this made with glitch and start with just this as my beginning template. Okay, so if I want to add in more pages to my site, so I have my index and my style sheet. I can also go to new file and do page2.html and hit enter, and then new file and page3.html and hit enter. And all of these pages here are pages that would be inside of a site folder, and I can link them to my index page. So I can add in, let's see, I'll put it under the heading, my link tag href equals page2.html, and then put page 2, and then a href equals, oops, I need the quotation, page3.html and page 3. And then I'm going to add in a link for the home page. So a href equals index.html and home. So I can now link to, this should say home, it's updated now. So I can link to these other pages, but I don't have anything on those pages yet, so they don't link to anything just yet. So previously we were adding style by putting it into our tag and doing something like color is pink, so that it would change the header here to pink. But if I do H1 again and say this is another title, it won't style it as pink because I've only added the style to this one element here. So if I want to apply the style to everything that has that tag, then this is where the styling of CSS comes in to be really useful. So here we have the CSS file, which will add styling rules to our content. And it will apply to everything that we link the style sheet to. So over here, because I added in this particular style on this tag, it overrides the CSS style here. But I could change the color to pink here, and it will apply to all of those H1 tags. So I no longer have to do this styling of my HTML tags elements one by one. I can just put it all into style tag. And what's useful about that is I can apply that one style to all my pages. So I'm going to copy my index and apply it to my page 2. And I'll just title this, this is page 2. And over here, when it updates, it's only going to update to the index. So I need to go to page 2 and it changes it to page 2, and the styling is applied to all of my pages now, because on page 2 I've also linked it to the same style sheet. So everything that I style in CSS document, the cascading style sheet is what that stands for. It's going to apply to every single page that I link it to, which really helps me to cut down having to add in style to every single page and every single element, because I can put it all in one spot. So if I style the tags, the HTML elements as they are all already come. So there's the body, the H1, I could do H2, and change the color to red, and then go to my index and change this to H2. All I have to do is enter in the HTML tag here. But I can also add in my own styling elements that are called div tags. And so instead of using an HTML element that already exists, I can create anything. So I'm going to name it, and I start off with a hashtag and say my div. And then in there, I will make a width as 100%, and I'll do a height, let's say 300 pixels, and we'll add a background color so you can see it, gray. And yeah, so we'll start with that. So if I go over to my index now, and I add in this div that I've named, I have to say div and write the ID equals my div, and then close it, and then close out that div. And so it created this box, and the div tags are kind of like style containers. So my div, which could be anything, I could just call this blah, blah, and then say, oh, my div ID is blah, blah. And there's nothing inside of the div, but it still creates this kind of block. So its width is 100%. So it's going to adjust to the width of the site in the browser when I move it. And the height is 300 pixels. So I could change this. I can make it 600, and then it will double, or I can make it 100 and it will go smaller. And then the background is gray, and I could change that to all sorts of colors. But there's nothing inside of it, but that is an element on my page. I could then inside of this put a paragraph and write blah, blah, blah. And I don't have any style for my P, my paragraph tag. So it's just doing the default, but I could now also style the P, and let's just change the color to blue, and that will style whatever is inside of the paragraph tag, even though it's inside of this div. I could also change this and put color equals blue. so that anything inside of this div tag is blue, but any text that I write, so color always applies to the text, and then background color is the background color. But that only applies to whatever's inside of here and not all of the paragraphs that are outside of that div. So it's a way to kind of differentiate different elements of text that are doing different things, or different elements of the page. So maybe this is more stuff here, blah, 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 blah. And that is all inside of this one div tag that I created called blah, blah, blah. I can put anything inside of here. So I can also add in an image. Oh, we didn't put in any images in our image folder. So when we did our sites last week, we had an image folder, but on Glitch, they have an assets folder. It's not really a folder, but it hosts different assets, and I can add in images here instead, and we'll host the image, and then I just link it here instead of to my images. So here's my example from last week, and I had an images folder, and I can add in some of these. I'll just add in a few of these and just drag it and drop it in here, and it will upload my images here. And then once they are done uploading, if I click on this and I hit copy, that's now my link to my image. So if I want to add in an image, I do, oops, it's gonna keep going back automatically to the assets page until they're all loaded. See if I can do it before it does it. So if I do image and then the source equals and quotation marks, and then I just copy that and close out the tag, that is now the image inside of my div tag. But you can see that the image is bigger than the div tag. So I need to style this to say something, what is it? It's overflow and hidden. So let's see, I have this height. Let me change the height to 500. Okay, so it's, if I put overflow as hidden, then it will, anything that falls outside of this div tag will be cut off here. If I do overflow, so it's uploading, overflow as auto, the overflow will automatically give me this little scroll bar so that I can scroll within my div in here to see the rest of it. And then I can do, if I have no, so I can do visible, which is the same as the default. So it will, if my div tag, which I gave a height of 500 pixels and my image is bigger, it's going to overflow outside of it. So the default is visible and it will show. So I'm going to put auto instead because I want it to stay within that. I could also, instead of giving it a height, just do no height. If I take away the height, it's just going to let me add in as much content as I want, and the div will keep expanding. So I could add in another image, the same one below this. And if I go next to the code now, it added in a second image below it and it expanded the div around it. So it all depends on what I want to do with my div here. Yeah. If I want it to be just expanding, or if I want it to be a certain height that you have to then scroll in. Height is 500 again. Now you have to scroll and see that second image. And I might want that because I might have a page that has a bunch of different things that I want you to scroll in. I can also keep this as a sort of background and add in another div. So I'll take out the color here and add in another div called content1. And then do color is blue. And I'll put the padding as 20 pics, and I'll add a background color so you can see it. Background color is I'll just put yellow. So I've added another div here. The padding is how much space is in between the content and the rest of the box. So there's a few different ways to adjust the where the content falls. If I add it up here, padding, and I put 50 pics, you can see it shifted from that edge of the box. So all of the content inside of my blah blah gray is going to be 50 pixels in all around. I can also then, so I have this color blue content and padding of 20 and the background color is yellow. I can go back to my index and add another div. ID equals content1, and put this around my paragraph only. So only my paragraph has this indent even more, or I could do how the example just showed up around the image and the text. And now there's a padding of 20 pixels here and 50 pixels here. So that's some of the way I can start to kind of work with laying out my site. If you go to W3 Schools, which I like to have open, and then go to the CSS page, there's a lot of examples here of CSS. Oops. And it explains some of the different things. So here's the padding, and you can just do the padding on the top, the padding on the right, the bottom, or the left. So I did the padding. If you just write padding, it will do padding all around. If I go back to my div over here, I could just do padding left as 20 pixels, and it will not do it on the top, but just the left. So I could change the whole padding, or I can change just parts of it by adding in some more specifics for how I want to change each of the adjustments. So I could do padding top is 20, and then padding left is 5. 5 is really low. Let's do 10. Oh, I spelled padding wrong. That's why. So now there's 10 pixels here and 20 here. They also have an explanation of what each of these terms add space to. So there's margin, border, and then padding, and then the content will go in there. So kind of understanding how border, margins, and padding works can help you to align things and change the way that they appear. So if I add in a border, it's going to add in a border around the yellow. And I could make that really smaller, 5 pixels. Or I can change the margin, which is how far over it is from the edge. So this already has a padding of 50, but then I added a margin of 20. So I can show you what this is. If I take away those 20, this is going to go back up there. If I added in the padding and made that 20, it's the yellow space here that increases. But if I wanted to move this whole box over from the left here, that's what the margin is. So the margin is moving it over even more. And that's similar to padding, where I can just do the margin top and it'll bring it just down. Or I can also add margin left and bring it over 100 pixels, and we'll shift it all right because I've added in a margin here, which is how far over the whole box is, which is different than margins on a Word document. For example, that's more how padding is used. So padding, if I wanted to increase the margin here, it's actually the padding. So I would add in 50, and now it's going to shift the yellow over here. So that's the padding versus the margin. And that is all here. You can look at it within the box model, or there's margins, borders, and the padding here. You can look at those things individually. I tend to not like borders. Borders are one of the things that you learn to design without, to have less lines. Okay, I'm going to change this color. I'm going to open up my HTML color picker. Let's get something more like that, a little easier on the eyes. Just grabbing the hexadecimal there. And I'm going to change this background color. You have to have a semicolon at the end of each CSS line. Otherwise, it's going to get glitchy. I'll change this. I'll do something like that. Hex color here. Okay. So that's how you create a div tag. I'm going to erase this image and this image so that we have this again. And I'm going to make my div tag height without a height. So it just will fit to whatever I put inside of it. We'll change this over here. Okay, so now I have these links down here, and I want to create a navigation bar. So I'm going to style these links for a navigation bar, and I'm going to move them under the first title there, because that's where I want to have my navigation bar is up at the top. And now I'm going to style the whole thing in CSS. So when we write the hashtag and give an ID for a div ID, we're creating a div tag ID. I can also create a div class by writing a period and then my nav, whatever you want to name it. So this could also be blah, blah. But I'm going to write my nav because I am styling the navigation bar. And in CSS, we write a comment with a / and an asterisk. And then you type style the navigation bar, and then an asterisk and a / And so that's a comment, which is to just organize and let myself know what is underneath this kind of area here. So this is going to be where I do my styling for my nav bar. So I put period, my nav, and then I'm going to add in a background color. And I'll just do black. And then I will do the overflow as hidden. And so that's just going to make a box with a black background. So I'm going to put that around my links up here. So I will do div, and now I write class equals my nav. And I have to take the closed part of the div tag and put it around all of my links. Okay, so now I've put this around all of my links, and I've just created this bar that my links are going to go into. And this space up here, actually, I'm going to get rid of that, is because this default glitch project comes with a margin on it. So if I delete that, it's going to get rid of that margin there. So I'm creating a class because now I can style different things within my nav bar by just adding the class without having to add it to all of the links. So for example, I'm going to do class is my nav and then A, because I'm going to style the navigation links, but I only want it to apply to the links in this nav bar. I don't want it to apply to all the links that I'm going to put on the site, because I'm going to add in more links over here. So if I add the class here, it will only apply the styling to the links that are within that div class in the index or in the HTML div where I've told it that that's the class. So I'm going to float it to the left, And it's already floating to the left. It just means that each of these are going to line up on the left. Now you can see they're all really close together. So I am going to create a display block. And then I'm going to do padding around those as 8 height and 10 tall. So now I've given padding around each of these elements. So if I give these a color, background color, gray, and then I give a margin left of 2 pixels, you can see that there's this little box around each of my links, and the floating left makes them all line up left of each other. And then the padding is adding in the padding around the word. So if I take away the padding, it's just fitted around the word. And the display block is displaying this in a block. You're not going to be able to tell because of the way that I'm styling it, but this helps to this display block. Here. The display block is basically lets you kind of, how do I describe it? Displays an element as a block element like P. Okay, so it's its own element basically. So instead of being like a word next to a word, it's a paragraph. It starts a new element, which lets me kind of have these spaces in between. So because I did margin left and it's a display block, it lets me add in a new element there. Let's see if that works if I take away the display block. No, it doesn't do that. Oh, okay. So if I take away the float now, yeah, so it's just letting me kind of treat these links in like separate blocks of CSS. Okay, so I'm going to take away the margin because I just wanted to show you the difference. This is all lined up right next to each other. And the text links automatically give you this underlined style. So I'm going to do text, that's part of the text decoration. And if you put none, it will take that away. So, you know, we don't need that to indicate there's a link when it's a navigation bar. And I can do the color of the text as, I'll just do red for now. I'm gonna make that red. And if I go back to my index, so all I had to do here was add in this div class with my nav, and it applied that class to everything within it. So even though I now added this new class for the links, I didn't have to go back and write here. I didn't have to write a class equals my nav on each of these because it's within this div tag that is applying this class to everything within the div. I can also change different parts of the actions for the link. So there's a hover kind of action, and I can change that so that when I hover, the background color changes to, let's get it. What is it now? It's gray. I don't know. Let's get something like this. And the text color, so you can just see. Yeah, so now when I hover over this, it changes to something else. Okay, so it's not applied on my page 2, but I've styled it in my CSS. So all I have to do on my page 2 now is go over here, add in my div class equals my nav, and put this around my navigation links. So now when I go to page 2, there are my styled navigation links. And this is going to put the navigation links wherever I put it on the page. So on page 2, if I put it down here, it's going to go underneath I'm a cool new page. If I want it to always be at the top, I can just have it be at the top by cutting and pasting and putting it there. So when I go to page 2, it's up here. I could also, in the style, change this from overflow. Let's see, I can do oh, right now I can do position fixed. This is more so for when you are scrolling. So now you can see it's fixed here. If I go into a new window, it's up at the top, and it's covering my other content, which I don't want it to do. Color red. Okay, yeah, so if I do, this at the top with the fixed position, and I take this content, this blah blah content, and I add a lot more of this. Next code now. See, when I scroll, it's fixed on top. So it's going to always be up at this top corner here, but you can't really tell unless you have a lot of content to scroll down. So it didn't really show up until I added more content. Let me add more content so you can see it even better. I'll just add this whole div again, content 1. Okay, so now my navigation bar is this kind of floating navigation bar that you have to, if you scroll down, it's always going to be fixed on the page right here. So that's another way to kind of keep it all in one. If I go to page 2, well, there's not the content on page 2, but it's just going to be fixed wherever that is. So that's a way to kind of keep it, or you can not do that. This doesn't always work with all devices, so it's better just to position it where you want. So if I just go back now, it's up at the top. I'm putting it above everything, and I'll just do that with my other page, and then fix it. Yeah, so I'll do this and put it here. And now position fixed, and it'll be at the top above everything. Okay, so that is a way to add a class to something. I can also do this with anything. So let's say I have I'll get rid of this extra chunk of stuff. I think this is an extra chunk here. So I have a div open, and then a div close, a div close. Okay, I don't want to have too many closing div tags. I'm gonna get rid of a couple of these paragraphs too. Okay. So in my style, I can also add in any kind of random thing. So here, if I just do random, and I do color is yellow. And I'll do the background color is red. Okay. I can add that to one of my paragraphs. So I could do a paragraph, and the class is random. So that way I can not change the P, which is, if I did that for P, it would change all of the text for P. But let's say I just want to have this one kind of thing here, and then I don't know, maybe it's going to appear again later. Then I don't have to change all of it. Whereas if it was, instead of random, if it was P, it would just apply it to everything within a paragraph tag. So that's where the class comes in really handy, because you can change it for only specific elements for different parts of the page. And now if I wanted to have a link styled, I could do A and do background color is blue, and the color is white. And now if I go to write in a link, page to HTML, somewhere else on my page, let's write another link, but not in the nav. It, not in the nav, and then there we go. Now I can have a link which goes to something else, which is just a normal link and is not styled in the same way that my nav page links are styled. Okay, so that is some of the basic things for styling. In this class, we're not going to do a lot of what you would normally do with styling. We're not trying to create, web pages for a specific thing that we need to have the style sort of blend in and be this like really user-friendly thing. But there are a lot of basic things that we need to do. And it can be really useful to have certain things that we don't need to spend a lot of time figuring out how to style. So one of those things is something like a grid, if you want to add in a lot of images. So if we go over here, there's a grid example somewhere. Yeah, so here's a grid. So you can use the grid to kind of lay out the style of the whole site. And you can also use it for styling something like a block of images. So if I take this, go here, try it yourself. So they have some info here. It says a grid layout must have a parent with a display property to set a grid or inline grid. And then the child elements of the grid container automatically becomes grid items. Okay, so they have this in their style tag here, but we can take this grid container and grid item and add it to our CSS. I'm going to call this image grid. And I'll copy that in here. And then we'll look at what they have for their div here. So we have div class for grid container and then a class for each of the grid items. Okay, so I'm going to put that in my index and I'll put that here. And then instead of, so in their example, they just had 1, 2, 3. Instead of that, I am going to put an image. So I will do image source equals, and I'll go to my assets and I will copy and oops, go to my index, put that source in there, and then close out the image. So now I'll just take this and copy it, and I'm just going to replace where it says 2, and then where it says 3, and then 4, and 5, and 6, and 7, and 8, and 9. So now when I go to my page, so now it gives me a grid with images and it's styled in the way that they have styled it. So I could keep on adding to this grid and have this, you know, I'd have to add in 3 more if I want to have more than 9. So I go 1, 2, 3, paste, paste, paste. And now I have 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so I have 4 rows. So I could keep adding to this grid, and it's a lot easier. I've just used the grid instead of trying to style each of these elements to fit in a certain way. I can use this grid because I know I'm going to do some kind of image grid, let's say. And now when I go over to the style, okay, let's go next to the code. I can change this so that this has no background color. And the padding is 1. And the padding here is 10. And borders, I don't want any borders. Actually, let's make the padding even smaller. So now I have this grid. Let's see if I get rid of any of the padding. Okay, so there's a lot of different things that I could do to play around with the way that this is styled. Put that back. If we go back here, it will tell you kind of different things. So here we go. There's like grid columns and the rows and then the gaps. So grid column gap, grid row gap, grid gap. And those are all things that you can change as well. So the column gap, if I wanted it to be bigger, I could change that in the container. And now it's going to really space those apart. You can do it all in the shorthand. So do the row gap and column gap. And then there's the lines. So we can place a grid item at column line 1 and let it end on column line 3. Okay, so you can make it go from 1 to 3. If I want one of the images to go from, right now I have 3 across, I can make one of these go from 1 to 3. So this is a class here, item 1. So I would add in item 1 and then add this class here, item 1. And now it's going to take up that whole space. So let's see, in a new window. So now it's taking up 2 columns with one of the images. Okay, so if you go through, try out different things of CSS. There's some templates here. You can use one of the templates. You can look at a bunch of the examples. And there's a lot of different things here to add in and play around with. One of the things that we'll do in the next part of the tutorial is look at some ways to kind of quickly bring in some CSS styling with different resources that other people have created. So you don't have to do every little thing yourself, but it really depends on your project and what you're doing. And this could be your CSS page, and your CSS, what you do with it can really be where you want to focus to get creative. But try this out and go to the next tutorial to try out some different CSS shortcuts. Good luck. See you soon.